we're actually set up pretty well there. I'm going to move this a little bit like that. There you go.
Oh, that's much better.
Oh yeah, we're the Men in Black today for season 3 of the Inglorious Pastords.
What are we doing in season 3? I mean, I think like season 2 wanted to kind of controversial topics. Let's do that in season 2. So
yeah, but we kind of successfully avoided that, except for maybe one episode.
Well, that sounds like a leadership problem.
The nationalism, patriotism discussion.
Well, we end up touching some on immigration, and that.
Did we talk about immigration? Oh my gosh, what were we thinking? No wonder
I don't know what you were
gone down.
I don't know what you were smoking during that episode. It turned out to be.
It was a great episode. So part of what we're doing in season 3 that's going to make it really fun is we're taking topic suggestions from our listeners. That would be you out there in listener land, and for
if you choose to participate.
And today we're going to do our first run on that, because I put all of our topic suggestions into a little plastic bin, and I'm going to swirl all those around. It's actually season 3. It's happening.
Okay.
And I'm going to pull one out, and that's going to be our topic today.
So that's our season 3 shtick is other people are picking the topics, and
if they don't give us topics, they're going to have 45 minutes of silence, and we'll turn on cricket noises.
Or just talk about the NFL the whole time, which I know some of our listeners love.
Rachel would not appreciate it if you talked about the NFL the whole time. By the way, I think the Broncos are officially now on what you would call a losing streak. It's definitely a streak now.
I thought you were going to say life support.
No, they're off life support. I mean, they've pulled the plug in Denver. That's all there is to it. But we're not here to talk football. No. We are here to talk sponsorship for season 3. Season 3 is going to be a fabulous season where we talk about.
We don't know what we're going to talk about.
We talk about things you're interested in, whether we are or not, frankly. And I love that because I think Roger and I can bring some biblical wisdom. Well, I can bring some biblical wisdom. Roger can bring some trivia to the discussion that can be potentially helpful for all of our listeners.
Yes. Oh, I think it'll be quite helpful. Yes.
So what's our sponsorship number we're shooting for in season 3?
Yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask. Yes.
Okay. So we would an episode. You can sponsor an episode for $200.
Okay.
So if we have 10 episodes again, you could sponsor an entire season for like $2,000.
Wow. That's really good price.
That is a very good price.
Right.
And right now we're running it half off. Did you know that?
Whoa. Now you've got to wait a little bit. You can't just throw the half off right at the beginning.
Did you say half off?
You said half.
Roger.
No, Roger said half
off. Well, I guess we're going half off then. Roger just agreed to a half off. I think he threw it out there a little quick. I would have held back on that. Let the 2,000 stay out there for a little while. But that's okay. So if you want to sponsor us, send a message to Bruce at brucewmartin.com or look us up on Facebook and leave us a message there, and we'll contact you about season 3 sponsorship, which is Listener's Choice. That's kind of the overarching name for this season.
Listener's Choice.
Listener's Choice.
Like it.
So you ready for our first Listener's Choice topic?
I can hold off a little bit.
Okay. I felt like I just went Price is Right there. A new car! I just love that.
Right.
And you're the next contestant on Inglorious Pastords. So is there anything you wanted to talk about real quick before we go to our listener topics?
Yeah, well, we've kind of had we go light early on, talk about some fun, I don't know. Hey, I have had the eBay sales. I've come across, now this kind of fun, last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I've been to the estates of 3 different former NASA employees.
Okay.
Which is actually very cool. Living in Huntsville, Alabama, that's one of the things that we end up, we've got
a NASA stuff going on here.
A lot of NASA engineers and employees and so on, who have a lot of cool stuff. And anyway, so last week it had a guy who was a NASA engineer. So on the side, for a hobby, he would make highly detailed paper models of rockets and missiles. And I mean, you could take them apart. They're segmented, and inside there'd be a lunar module, or there'd be these other, all in paper. All in paper. Paper sort of cardboardish, but highly detailed. And the people were telling me that he would consult with other engineers to get the exact scale right of so on. So, I mean, he had, like, I've got rockets like, the Saturn
5.
Well, that's one of them. The SA-10 and all of these different, and they maybe is 2 feet tall. They're just absolutely fascinating. I should have brought one of those in. Actually, that would have been cool. But
do you want to sell those?
Yes, that's the plan.
So Roger again is sponsoring the first episode with sales of paper rockets. Thanks, Roger.
Yes, that will take our podcast to the moon.
It's going to soar now.
Soar. That's our word.
That's soar. Yes. That's if you want to soar. If you want your business to soar, then sponsor Inglorious Pastords season 3 and let the soaring begin.
I think the sponsorship may be what our readers start saying. Let's talk less about that.
What do you see here, Raj?
Oh, goodness. Look at all these topics in here.
Topics everywhere.
Now, it appears to me that there may just be one piece of paper there.
No, that's a, see, look, for you people out there that can see this, look at that. I'm going to mix these all up good, and we're going to pull one out this morning, pull out a single topic, and then Roger's going to talk about it in some detail. All right, you ready? So our first topic, season 3, listener's choice.
Wait, I should probably open it. That would just make it feel more like it's not being rigged to people.
Right. Well, it's not being rigged.
Right.
This is a topic that came
I'm opening a pink. I'm opening a pink.
Why would you open anything?
Okay. And this says,
this week's topic is, I think we need a shtick like that. This week's listener's choice topic is.
You want to guess? It starts with an A.
Well, since it came to me via email, I actually know what it is, Raj. Why don't you tell our listeners what it is?
Okay. The anticipation, I know, is killing everyone. What I'm seeing here is antidepressants. Antidepressants.
So this came from one of our listeners that is, I'm guessing, is probably pretty tired of the whole COVID thing, and we're indoors a lot and social distancing and everything else. And I know it's interesting, you talk about how well your eBay business is doing. I realized my coaching counseling has gone through the roof right now. And I think some of it is people need to get face to face with people and have conversations. And so,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So I've got a couple things I want to say about antidepressants. Now, granted, I knew about this yesterday, but that's okay. Been very honest about my own journey with depression. So first thing I would tell listeners on the antidepressant zone is, number one, talk to your doctor. Depression is a treatable condition. And a lot of people just, they try to manage it or get by. And I'm just like, talk to your doctor and tell her or him exactly what you're experiencing. If it feels like deep sadness, if it feels like despair, if it feels like rage or anger, whatever that is, because they can help you on the medical side of that. Here's what you need. And I told our listeners earlier this year, I changed from Wellbutrin to Zoloft, which has been wonderful. It's really been a game changer for me this year. I did that in July.
And those are antidepressants?
Those are antidepressants.
Okay.
So Wellbutrin is a dopamine. That just sounds funny to me.
Right.
And the Zoloft is an SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. All that to say, because my body cannot manage serotonin well on its own, then I have medication that helps me.
Okay.
Second thing I would tell you on the antidepressant level, okay, and this is, for some of you, this is big. It's get outdoors. Get outdoors. I think even if getting outdoors doesn't help you immediately, I think staying indoors could make things worse. There's something about being confined and boxed in when you're already feeling depression, particularly if it's not a real well-lit house with lots of windows and all of that. depression, there's a part of it that can be exacerbated by literally the context that you're in. So I get outside this time of year. I love the fall, getting outside, and sunlight is even good. A lot of times when you're experiencing depression, even one of my psychiatrists said, hey, you might want to consider getting a lamp that you literally can read under that is illuminating you. It's not just illuminating the book that you're reading, but it's actually, it's good for your brain. It's good for your brain.
So the outdoors is its own kind of antidepressant. Okay.
And then sunlight is a genuine antidepressant.
Okay.
So I'm excited. In 2 weeks, Roger and I and our families are going to Florida, where we will be outside in the sun.
Yep.
Hopefully it'll be sun. And enjoying the ocean, enjoying the beach. So that's the second thing. So first, talk to your doctor, because depression is a treatable condition, and talk to him or her about an antidepressant for that. Number 2, get outdoors, get sunlight, which is critically important. But the third thing, this is really the big one. You ready?
I know.
So this is huge for me. This is huge for me when I'm experiencing depression. Depression tends to focus us on everything that's kind of wrong in our life. Mm-hmm. The things that are difficult, the things that are hard, the things that are bad, whatever that is. So with clients now, I do this thing. For those of you that are watching this, you can see this. I'll take a white sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11, and I'll just put some black scribble in the middle of it. It looks a little bit like the ink blot test. People think I'm ink blot testing them. Right. And you can see it's only about the diameter of a quarter. So if you can imagine an 8.5 by 11 sheet of white paper, and there's a little black ink blot in the middle of it, and I make it just look all scraggly and everything. And I'll hold that piece of paper up to them and I'll say, look at this. And I'll say, what do you see? And they will just focus in on that little black ink dot. And they'll be like, oh, that looks like my brain right now. Oh, that looks like chaos. That looks like dark black stuff. And then I'll say this. I'll say, you realize 98% of this sheet is white paper. It's white space.
Mm-hmm.
And what I teach from that, and what I have to do, it's not something that I just teach. It's something that I practice is white space is all the things in our life that are good. All the things that God has been gracious and faithful. And so relationships, when you're experiencing depression, you can think about all the relationships in your life that are maybe a little sideways, that aren't as good, that you've lost, that have been broken. But you can also think about the great relationships in your life. Like, I mean, my relationship with my brother, Roger, this is such a good life-giving relationship for me. I'm very grateful for that. White space, in a word, the best by me antidepressant is gratefulness.
Yep.
It just says, I am grateful that I'm breathing, that every day I have a chance, an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life, to encourage them, to refresh them. I have food, shelter, and clothing. I'm able to get around physically. I have all 5 of my senses. It's amazing when I start going through a list of the things that I'm grateful for, I realize I'm not just blessed, but I'm just overblessed.
Yeah.
And when I do that, it literally is an antidepressant, because we're not, and people that have experienced depression know what I'm talking about. You're not focusing on those little black spots that seem to be at the center of your life. Instead, you're looking on the edges and you're saying, God's been very faithful and very good. So no matter how difficult certain things are that I'm going through, I'm very grateful.
And it's such an important word. And I want to circle back to depression, but it's so important to say, for those who don't battle depression, I mean, who would say, okay, that's me. One of the challenges in talking with Bruce about so we're brothers. There's so many things about our lives that are similar, and in ways that are just comical at times. But one place we're not is the depression battle. And Bruce has had an entirely different kind of battle there than I have had. But
Roger battles dementia, and I can't really help him with that.
Right. At least yours is treatable.
Yeah, it's true. I'm sorry. You feel on the outside of that part of my life.
Well, I just suddenly forgotten what I'm going to say.
Well, it's Depression Day. We're both wearing black shirts. That's awesome.
But so for people for whom that's not a battle, this gratitude, the seeing the white on the page and not the blot, is still very, very, very important. And we've been talking about that, but God's been pressing that on my heart. I think we talked recently about how quickly we, without even realizing, we log, we track, we laugh about memory loss, but what we don't forget trouble. We don't forget difficulties in our life. We don't relational stress, whatever. We have to work at remembering. We have to work at, and that's where the gratitude comes in, and the giving thanks. And I've just gotten to a point where I realize, for me, every single morning, this is the rhythm. Is I sit down, did it again this morning. Went on my front porch about 5:15, sitting out in the dark, and just thanking God. Another thing I'll just say about gratitude. I remember having this moment where I thought, I'm just thanking God for the same things. There's a kind of a sameness, whatever. And
you started wondering if God gets tired of hearing that.
Well, tired of it. And of course, there was part of the problem is realizing is the thought that gratitude was simply about God or other people, and not realizing that naming and saying something. But it dawned on me, what's the same as, it's like my wife doesn't grow tired of me saying I love you. I mean, I can say it again and again. So you just keep saying that.
I'm tired of saying that.
Right. She doesn't
love you, schmove you.
She doesn't get tired of me thanking her for the same things. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for, and I realized gratitude. Don't feel like I've got to be super creative. Now, there's a place for thinking outside the box. I want to just try and exercise. I want to thank God for stuff that I haven't normally thanked him for. Great. But don't feel like there's some kind of a loss. I just thanking God for the same old thing, that amazing sunrise that keeps coming up. Or
well, and think about it. It's interesting. Even when we were sort of taught to pray as children, I remember that because I prayed the same prayer for all the way into my adult life. I would begin the prayer, Heavenly Father, thank you for this day.
Yeah.
Now think about that. Thank you for this day. It's the simplest thing in the world.
Yeah.
But it's important.
And so many of my black brothers and sisters, theirs is, God woke you up this morning.
Yeah.
And they're
thank you up.
Right. Thank you for this day. They'll say, God woke me up this morning. And that's that first ray of thanks.
Isn't that interesting?
But I was driving the other day, and again, if I'm paying attention, not just looking at the black dot on the center of the page, but I was just looking at, again, the sky. I'm just sitting in this incredible story. I'm sitting here driving a car, and I'm seeing these amazing colors, and I can steer, and I can do things, and I can go, and I'm looking forward to going and doing this fun thing, and I get to eat a meal, and I was just, and there's a point where when you're grateful enough, it starts coming. You need the discipline of it. You got to work at it.
Right.
But it starts coming naturally where you start seeing.
You start seeing more.
You start seeing more.
The more you look for white space, the more white space you'll see.
Yes.
That's absolutely true.
Yes.
And that's just something that you're challenging me on right now. I'm thinking, I want to start looking for things to be grateful for that I haven't expressed gratefulness for.
Yeah.
Because it even, we talked about this before, but the neuroscientist says, even when your brain is looking for something to be grateful for, it releases those positive feeling things, chemicals into the brain. Even if it can't find something, the fact that you're looking. Now, think about the extraordinary way that God wired the brain. He wired it for gratefulness. And yet I realized, I was talking to some friends earlier this week about, kind of the routine when we get home in the evening. And typically when we get home in the evening, our routine will be to talk about what difficult thing happened that day. Oh gosh, this was brutal.
Yes.
We had this shipping thing that went south. Or I'm like, oh, the car broke down on this. And we tend to, and I realized, I talked to Marlene about this last night. I said, we need to change our routine, which is every day when we come home from our work, because there's always things that go wrong through the day. And it's okay to talk about those things. But I realized we're sort of creating a lot of negative energy right when we come in the door, and just say, hey, something I'm grateful for from yesterday that's just cool.
Right.
Well, apparently my big giant green trash can that the city provides blew up when they tried to load it, because I had so much building materials in it. There may or may not have been some concrete in it.
which may or may not have been illegal.
But did you know what the beautiful thing was? When I got home yesterday, there was a beautiful, brand new green garbage can in my driveway. I'm like, that's awesome. I've never seen a brand new one. I mean, there's no scars on it, no scratches.
We'll fix that.
Well, yeah, won't take long to. But so I came in yesterday with Marlene. I was like, 4 things that I'm grateful for. Now, Marlene was probably not as excited about the green can, as you can imagine, but I thought it was cool. I take out the trash in our house, and just emptying trash into that thing was fun. So I'm going to try to keep thinking of new things that I'm grateful for because I'm missing them.
Right. Add one new thing.
Because there is a discipline to it. You're exactly right. I don't know about our listeners, but I'll gravitate to, here's the hard thing that I experienced today.
Yep.
Or here's the bad thing that I experienced today.
No, and I like that where even the reminder that we sometimes slip into rhythms we're not even aware of. We slip into a rhythm that focuses first on the negative or the thing that's not going right or whatever. And by the way, once you get into that conversation, it's hard to cycle back into the now, I think it's important to say that it's still important to be able to talk about the negative. This isn't don't ever talk about trouble. Don't ever talk to your spouse about how, the day went poorly. No, we also need to be able to unload the burdens. We need to unload. But that's one of these tensions God calls us to live in, is the tension of we're carrying loads. We need to share that with people. We do need to talk about pain and hardship, whatever. But that has to be balanced out with naming, crediting the gifts we have to the God who's given them and to people who've graced us in different kinds of ways. So, I'm so glad whoever sent us the antidepressants word topic, because I have wanted to talk a little bit, because you can't have antidepressants without depression. I mean,
that does seem to follow.
Right. In other words, so
I see there's a connection there, Raj. He is so solid about making those connections.
And I don't even have to work at it. I mean, like that just came to me.
Yep, I'd have totally missed it.
It was just like, so
antidepressant.
And it's one of those things that depression. Now, when we were growing up, I mean, that was like a off limit. You didn't talk about that. It's sort of in church world, or it was all very simple. If someone is dealing with depression, well, of course, there were some spiritual things. Pray some more, read your Bible some more, and that should. But so I'm so glad someone brought that up, depression, and again, I'm asking so I'm that person who doesn't battle that like you do. And I've got other family members, and I've had just a lot of wonderful conversations, because in my larger family, siblings and some of my kids, and so there's my wife. There's some battling with that. I've had less of that journey, so I can provide less kind of insight. But I was thinking about this. I guess for people who are maybe struggling with depression or wonder if they are, I mean, where do you go? What do you, and maybe even for people, I don't know, maybe their church, that's still an off topic. You can't go there. Talking to someone recently who said it was so painful for me to hear. Talking to this person who said, "Oh, of course I can't talk to my pastor about this. I can't talk to this particular thing going on." And I just thought, that's such a it's people. So for people who are walking or wonder if they're battling depression, where do they go? Where do you start?
Well, you have to go to a safe place, because I will tell you this, when you're experiencing depression, you're already very vulnerable. In other words, it's a little bit like if your soul has nerve, endings, they're all exposed. Your soul feels very exposed when you're experiencing depression. So you have to go to a safe person. If your pastor's not safe, you're not going to go to them.
Yeah.
If your spouse isn't safe, you're not going to go to them. If you have friends that aren't safe, and by safe, I mean, there's a lot of unhelpful things you can say to a person experiencing depression. Let me give you just a few. Snap out of it. Okay, that's not helpful. That's going to be a bad one. Not again. Also, not helpful. This is a surprisingly unhelpful statement. Are you better yet? Are you doing better now? And it flows from a heart of, I want to know that you're better, but it often flows really from, I want to be relieved that, because I'm so tired of you being in this difficult space. And so a safe place, number one, is a counselor. So when you talk to a counselor, whether that's a licensed professional counselor or someone in your church that does counseling, and this is in addition to whatever work you're doing with your doctor or psychiatrist about the medical side of that. So I have a counselor that I talk to that's very helpful. And sometimes me just talking out certain things with that counselor helps unload my mind, which is a big deal. I'm not carrying all those things, that negative energy in a cycle in my mind. I'm getting it all out there. And then it's like, I don't carry it anymore. I can't explain that exactly.
Okay.
But it has to be a safe person that understands depression. And that's where you might have to do some reading on this. You might have to help in some ways inform your friends about depression and how it works, and even have a conversation with them about, these are unhelpful things to say when I or someone else is experiencing depression, but these are helpful things. Like Roger will say to me things like, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine how hard that is. And that's just you're expressing empathy in that moment.
Okay.
So compassion is good. I did a talk on this last year, and I had 2 nurses that came up to me after this talk, and they said that was the single best. We've been trained all over the place. That was the single best talk we heard on how to help someone that you love that's experiencing depression. And one thing that I say in there that makes sense to the person experiencing depression, not necessarily to the caregiver, is treat that person as though they had cancer. If that person had cancer, you wouldn't go, snap out of it. Holy cow, not again.
Right.
Are you better yet?
Yeah.
When someone has cancer and we know that they're going through harsh treatments and it's hard on their body and it's hard on their soul, it's hard on their emotion, we handle them with a certain tenderness and compassion and care. And I think that that's what a person experiencing depression needs. And it's really, I think, the most healthy environment for them to come out of that.
So I'm hearing what you're saying, though. There's this nuance there, because that's a very helpful distinction. And I so wanted you to talk about how we walk with people who may be battling depression. But that nuance there, what I'm hearing with that is even an assumption that we can have with depression that they should be able to fix it.
Right.
So in other words, with cancer, well, we know now listen, you didn't bring that on yourself. There's not anything you can do to fix that.
Are you running enough?
Right. We don't. But really I think that's that subtle idea that we have because it's not seeing it as an ailment, not seeing it as a sickness. This is something you should be able to fix. So there should be that thing you can figure out. There should be that it should be able to happen. And
isn't that interesting? We see a mental sickness or an emotional sickness very different than we see a physical sickness.
Almost not real. Almost like that's, you got yourself into, you should be able to get yourself out.
And let's see how this applies to even spiritual sickness. Because we come into this world spiritually sick. Can I fix that?
Sure.
Can I fix that? Nope.
Yeah.
I have to have a savior.
Yeah.
I have to have a rescuer. Only Jesus can heal that. It's very real, though.
Yeah.
It's very real. And I think that's where some people have struggled in understanding depression. They've attached a spiritual sickness to it. Oh, you must be a negative person, or you must not have enough faith in God, or you must not be trusting the Lord, or you might, any number of things that you can attach to that aren't helpful.
Yeah.
But when you understand, it's like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome.
Yes.
Yes. It's a sickness, and it's treatable. And it's, in my experience, it's not something that is immediately treatable. Like, even when you take antidepressants like a medicine, it generally takes several weeks for your body to begin adjusting to that and for that to work.
Yeah. Which is one of the challenges, it seems to me, because there's certain kinds of illnesses where there is this antidote, we know, or this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh goodness. If you've,
I wish every year I could get a depression shot.
Exactly.
That would be awesome.
Right.
Oh, it's February. Time for my depression shot. Wouldn't that be great if you could just stave it off like that? But we can't. It's not one of those things. My psychiatrist told me years ago, Bruce, there's no magic pill for this. And that's where I started understanding even the way that my body responds to different treatment changes over time.
Right.
In my 50s now, apparently the dopamines aren't working as well. Wellbutrin. And so we're moving to an SSRI. All that to say, I am very open with my doctor about what I'm experiencing, because I want my family, I want my friends, I want the people that I work with, my clients, I want to experience the best version of Bruce.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, this is the other thing I'll tell you about depression. Don't just assume I can get through this on my own.
Okay.
It's I don't know why it's so hard to ask for help if I have a severe bowel injury or pain, I'm going to eventually go to the emergency.
Raj, I can't tell. I've stopped trying to pinpoint exactly what the trigger is. There's got to be. So you've shared with me, and Bruce will do this, and he'll say, it's back. I don't know what it is. And you've come to grips with, okay, this is the part of the journey. Sometimes it's worse than others, but letting go of what's that thing that triggered? I've got to figure that out. And I've got to, just like other kinds of ailments that come in and maybe go into remission, and then they come, there's an ebb and flow. And I guess there seems to me there's a kind of peace that you've ended up having of letting go, of trying to control it. It's horrific when you're going through it,
right?
But trying to control it almost makes it worse.
Potentially. And I think I've learned I have to be smart about it, which is I've got to let my doctor know. I've got to be honest with him or her about what's going on. And then I have to do the things that I can do cognitively to address how I feel. And then that's where the white space exercises.
The gratitude piece,
super helpful. I was going to say something else, but I can't think of it now. Why don't you share, Roger?
Well, so getting things that help, even though you can't fix or make it work. So you've talked about getting outdoors, talking to a doctor, medication.
Yep.
And I remember how significant, I've had talked to so many people who needed to hear, I'm talking about, and this is sad for me, that sort of from church world, that it's okay to take medicine. Again, the kind of thing.
But Roger, I in this office, I give people permission all the time. I have to say those words. It's okay to take medication for that.
Right.
And I don't understand totally what our thing with not taking medications. And I realize part of it, because I've been there, which is I want my body to be able to address this on its own, figure it out.
Right.
Totally get that.
Don't want to get attached maybe to some kind. I don't want to get addicted, or I don't want to get dependent.
But if I'm diabetic,
right,
and my body cannot manage sugar, I'm going to die unless I get medicine.
I just don't want to do that insulin thing.
Right. Or even think about the person that has rheumatoid arthritis that comes and goes, and it gets worse sometimes and it's better sometimes. And there's certain things they can eat that make it worse. And there's stretches that they might have to do, but there's also medication.
Yes.
That helps relieve the inflammation and swelling. And I don't think a person with rheumatoid arthritis would go, I'm just gonna enjoy the neural look today.
Yeah.
And the pain.
Yeah. And it seems to cycle back around again, is seeing depression in somehow a different category. Right. It's almost like it's not a real sickness. We know diabetes, cancer, we know but aren't we still sort of battling?
We are struggling with it.
That it's not that, again,
it's all just mental.
It's in our mind. So we should just need to think a little differently. And so we got to keep challenging that thinking.
Who knew the brain was actually an organ? It's an organ in your body.
Right.
It's got chemicals and fluids and stuff. And when those get out of whack, there's a lot of electricity too. When those get out of whack, it's like a bad tummy ache. It's like a broken leg. It's whatever that is, and why that happens. I think that's part of the thing that we don't know exactly why this thing happens.
Yeah.
Why your body doesn't manage serotonin reuptake correctly.
Yeah.
I don't know. It would be nice if we could always just come with here's the cure for it forever.
Okay.
But so far, it's like common cold.
So I want to hit this, but and you've touched a little, but I think it's really important. So the person out there is saying, I want to be a safe person. There are people in my life that I know are battling depression or they're battling anxiety. I want to be a safe person. You know, someone goes to a doctor because that's a safe, but I want to be a safer. What can I do aside from, what I should say or shouldn't say, maybe necessarily, but how can I become a safer person?
So the things I said earlier about, hey, I'm so sorry, and if you don't experience depression,
right,
you can sympathize and say, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I can't imagine what that's like. If you've experienced depression, you can look them in the eye and say, hey, I know the pain of depression. Yes. I know the pain of anxiety. I think you can ask curious questions, but not make them leading questions. Like, are you better yet? Which sort of feels like, hopefully you've turned the corner. Yeah. But you can, and I think you've had this. How you doing today?
Yeah, just
how you doing today? It's a curious question, right. And it gives me the opportunity to decide really what do I want to talk about.
Say
this
as much as you want. Yeah, say as much as you want to say.
A safe person lets you talk about it or not talk about it. Right. And sometimes I just can't. I can't explain it. I just can't talk about it. I don't even want to talk about it in that moment. But other times I do want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I need someone I can talk to about it.
And I would think, and I think I've learned this from in walking with my own wife with some real anxiety kinds of things that she would tell you about. I'm not disclosing something. She knows how important it is to talk about that, but anxiety issues and some depression. One of the things I've learned from maybe the hardware is, again, listening without fixing. Listening without, I read this great article, or I think, but just the listening without, and just keeping your, without, and so there are points of empathy or whatever, but,
well, yeah. I'm a person that appreciates a good article that's sent to me, not out of a fixing thing, but hey, this might help you in your journey of understanding, depression, yes, or what's going, or this might, or even if a friend says, hey, tell me your take on this. This person's talking about their journey with depression, or this doctor is talking about this. Tell me your experience with that. Mm-hmm. And it just it allows that person, because again, what I don't want people to hear me saying is, hey, if there's a person that is just living in a state of negativity and all they're spouting and saying is negative, and you don't want to enable that. I'm not saying just allow a person.
Don't ever challenge.
I'm not saying you don't ever challenge that. I'm saying depression, when you understand that a person is experiencing the illness of depression, that's different than just I'm being critical or negative. Because by the way, I've been not depressed and got in very critical negative spaces.
Okay.
And it wasn't attached to depression.
Yeah.
It was just a critical spirit. It was an unhelpful dialogue.
So, it's such an important time, but I just want to make sure that I'm not leaving any thread untied.
Have I not said something you want me to say?
No, I'm not. It's just so important. I'm glad that this, because this is something that I just think people need to hear. You can't talk enough about that. And I guess one other thought that hit me is it's just staying with people, being with them.
Yeah.
However long the battle is going to go, and even communicating that. Listen, I'm in it for the long haul. Whether you ever get fixed or not that's not.
No.
Because I guess maybe that's part of the point when you're sitting there, and the goal is not getting this person fixed, but I love them. I'm going to walk with them. I'm going to be there.
That's big. I think when a person is experiencing depression, part of how that manifests is we feel like we don't have anything to offer to the relationship. So there's a little bit of fear about, might I lose the relationship, or I'm not bringing anything to the table. I remember in some of my closest friendships, I'm like, I'm not bringing anything to the table. I don't have anything to say. And it's great to know that I don't have to say anything. I don't have to be the life of the party. I don't have to because that person's going to be there. There's something about assuring presence and just being a comfort to people that's important, because they already feel like, gosh, I'm the weak link here. I'm the person who's not really adding a lot to the relationship right now. And depending how introverted or extroverted, I'm typically extroverted, so I might process that a little differently, because I feel like I should be more outgoing. I should be a little more
right. And it's why, as we can't, we've talked about gratitude, but even just thanks and praise to people, seeing the good that they we can't see. Now, again, this is outside of simply whether someone's depressed or not, because there's that own part of us that's focusing on my failures, that kind of, even with my own life, I kind of look at the black spot on the center of the page, whatever kinds of good I've done or what I tend to focus on. But I think about the power even of positives people. Here's what I see. It just seems to me there have been a couple of times when I've named something about you that you would say, I wasn't seeing this. I wasn't
seeing it. Right. That's a great word.
So again, this, which we need to be doing all the time, this word about encouragement, encourage one another daily, keep pointing out the things. This is the progress. So this is what comes to my mind. And I know this for even walking with my wife, Joy. I need to talk about even the smallest little thing of progress where I've seen.
Yes.
And I noticed that you didn't do this. And sometimes and I see a thing and I've watched it point her eyes light up, because she hadn't noticed that. So she needs to hear, and people need to hear, anyway, where you see progress, where you see even a baby step or I saw what you did there. That's not a small thing. And to name that and say that, we all need to hear that. But people battling depression,
that's a great word, when you can speak what is true to them, because sometimes depression will focus you on what's not true.
Yes.
But it feels true. So if I just feel like a bad person, and for other people to speak into my life, no, this is what I see. I realize what you're talking about. I even do this in counseling sessions. So if I'm working with a couple that's really been maybe in crisis or have a lot of conflict, part of my job is in meeting with them, particularly when I meet with them several sessions, is I get to a particular point. I look them in the eye and I say, you guys are doing better. You guys are doing better. I can tell your body language is better. Your eye contact is better. And I can see it it's almost like a little bit of relief for them to know, because they can't see it. They still feel like we're in the middle of this very tense place, conflict in our relationship. But having another person outside of them that's objective say, no, you're doing better. I can tell you're doing better because I can see those things. That's important to point out, because that's how people know they're growing. That's how they know they're making progress. Otherwise, the temptation is to throw up our hands.
Yeah.
Because we can't see the progress in the moment.
We can't see. And we have an enemy that we know
is accusing
and reminding the bad and the things we aren't doing well. I remember when Dad was in the deep black hole of his clinical depression that was just caught us all off guard. Certainly him, and in just the moments where he couldn't see any hope.
Nope.
And literally there was but he can talk now about words that he needed to hear from other people, because he needed other people to see a hope that he could not see. He could not conjure it up. He needed people to see light at the end of the tunnel because he couldn't see it. Just thinking about how important that is.
So to wrap up episode 1 of season 3.
Yes.
I would say this: be grateful and send your topics to Bruce at brucewmartin.com so that we'll have something to talk about next week. I really hope our listeners go crazy with this.
Well, no, I would. Now that more important than sponsors. I mean, we have fun with that.
Oh yeah, it's your time to talk about sponsorship. Good.
But literally putting in something like this, like someone putting in a topic like this, it's so timely, so important, a little bit vulnerable.
Yep.
But boy, I'm just again grateful for that. So I'm excited about what comes in perhaps this week.
That'll be awesome.
And here's the warning. if you don't send in a topic, we're going to have to come up with one, and you may not like it. So
we might even talk about football.
Football. Hey, we're going to threaten. You don't send something in?
Scotch smotch. Thank you very much. All right. Well, and this is episode 1 complete.
Yeah, you shouldn't have scotch so early.
Scotch smotch. That was one of my favorite commercials. It was so good.